Good morning. So, Pastor Phil just finished last week a 5-week series on We Are TBF. It's about our values. Who are we? And he started with, we're all a mess. We're a church of messy people. And we went on from there to we live in community. We don't do this alone. And we serve. We pursue hard after the next generation. And we're generous and we're united. Those are the values. Those are the things that we hope to actually describe the kind of church we are. So the question then is, okay, does it make a difference? We're doing that. Is it really making a difference in the lives of people? And so what I want to do today is just say, hey, we are a church full of stories. It is making a difference. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to start with one of my first bridge stories. On Easter Sunday, Phil had called me. My home church is in Franklin, and I went there on Saturday for Easter, and he said, come over and go to the Expo with us on Sunday so you can get a feel for what's going on over here. So I did. I drove over, 9 o'clock service, and I go in and sit down on about the second row, and there's a young man in front of me, maybe 30. When you're 74, 30 is young, okay? And he's wearing blue jeans and a T-shirt, and he's got tattoos, and he's stretching all over the place. And all of a sudden he says, oh, poop. Except he didn't say poop. And it's okay, use your imagination. And now if he'd have been at the First Church of the Holy and Righteous, somebody would have pointed their finger at him and said, young man, you shouldn't talk that way. You need to go home and wash your mouth out with soaps, yada, yada, yada. I just kind of looked up at him. He turned to me and said, oh, I'm sorry. And I said, it's okay. I feel that way myself sometimes. So we're a church full of stories. So here's the story, though. We have the service. We worship. Phil preaches. The sermon that day was about how hard God comes after us. At the end of the service, Phil just asked people, pray, receive Jesus, you need him. And we did baptism. We had our horse troughs all over the place. If you've given your life to Christ today, you can come down and you can be baptized right here today. That young man got up out of his chair, walked down, gave his life to Christ, and was baptized. Isn't that great? So people ask Jesus, why are you here? I mean, why did you come? What is this thing all about? And Jesus answered that question several ways. He said, well, I came to preach good news to people that are just spiritually poor, spiritually bankrupt, lost. I came to heal the brokenhearted. I came to proclaim liberty to prisoners, recovery of sight to the blind, people that are blind spiritually, they don't know truth, and to set free those who are oppressed. That's quite a list. And in essence, he was saying, I didn't come for the people that are holy and righteous and think they are. I came to reach out to the old poop people, the people that are a mess. That's what TBF does. That's what we're all about. This all started 13 years ago. I was at home in Franklin. My phone rang one day, and it was Phil. Hey, Dick, how you doing? What's up, Phil? We're moving to Tennessee. Why on earth are you doing that? We're going to start a church. And I thought, we have 500,000 churches already. Why do we need another church up here? And Phil says, this is not going to be like most churches. We actually want to be a church for people that really are a mess, that are spiritually bankrupt. They're in bondage. They're prisoners, whatever. That's the kind of church that I want to start. Because Phil knew, and we know when we're honest, we need Jesus a lot more than we need church. And he said, I want to have a church where people can find Jesus. So in April of that year was the launch meeting. My wife and I drove over from Franklin, and I don't remember exactly where the meeting was, but there were 30, 40 people there, and Phil just started casting vision and sharing what he wanted to do. And out of that, I guess, wow, he's actually going to do this. This is cool. And a few months later was the first service. 227 people showed up. That's a pretty good start for a brand new church. And of course, it was in a great facility. There were stained glass windows everywhere, pipe organs. I mean, it was. Why are y'all laughing? Does that not describe West Wilson Middle School accurately? Did I miss something here? Actually, it was in the lobby of the school. And so you know how that goes. Every week, somebody has to get up early and drive the trailer to the campus. People have to show up and unload the trailer. Another group, and so you do your services, and at the end of that, that all has to be packed up. You don't want to leave any debris because they're having school the next morning. Load the trailer and back. And that's not just every now and then. It's every single week. That was the bridge for 6 years. Some of you probably were part of one of those teams, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. No surprise if you know Phil and know this church. In about 6 months, we had the first baptism service. The only surprising thing about that is that Phil was willing to wait 6 months, actually. 35 people were baptized in that service, and here's what's amazing. 28 were adults. Now, I want you to think about that. When a church starts reaching adults, you're making a dent in the devil's dark kingdom. You know, a lot of churches raise up their own children in the faith and baptize their own children. But when you're out there and people out there that are far from God don't know and they're starting to come, you are really starting to accomplish something. And so that was a great start. And people kept coming in increasing numbers. A year later was the first student camp. 15. This year, counting adults that were sponsors and everything, almost 300. It's quite a big change in 13 years, isn't it? And 48 of those, by the way, were from Watertown, and a number of those students were able to go because you gave to I Love This Place, and they had scholarships. A lot of them didn't pay a dime, and a lot of them that didn't pay a dime gave their life to Christ. It was only a year later was the first children's camp in 2007. 1 year later than that, we baptized our 100th person in this church. And it just kept growing and growing and growing. In 2009, the church hit 500 in attendance. Things are going. In 2010, we're now up to 3 services. Things are growing like crazy. And still, every Sunday, what is it? Drive the trailer, unload the trailer, load it all in, pack it back up, haul it back, week after week after week. Which, by the way, is what they're doing in Watertown still, okay? Well, the need for a campus began to become clear. So in 2010, we bought this land and began to raise the money and built the first phase of this building. And moved in 2011, full, in 3 services already, no breathing, just we're packed, let's do it. We baptized our 1,000th person in less than a year after we had been here. It's okay, go ahead, come on. Yeah, come on, okay, it's okay. We're out of children's space already, so the next thing was to build the children's wing over here. And so because of that, we kept growing, and we hit 1,000 in attendance in 2012. It was great, and baptized our 500th person in that same year. Church is 7 years old at that point. So we added the children's wing, baptized our 1,000th, and that year in 2014 we had over 3,000 here on Easter, and that's here. I don't even know how many services it was, 6, 8, it was a bunch of them, okay? And you can only imagine how exhausted the staff was. We started our Watertown campus in 2016. We continued to grow, and last year baptized our 1,500th person in the life of this church. Amen. That's great, isn't it? So rather than trying to have 10 or 12 services, we moved to the Expo for Easter last year and just missed 4,000 people by this much. It was great. It's 2018, 13 short years or long years, whichever you want to think. This year we went over 4,000 on Easter. And that young man I mentioned was one of them. Every Sunday, 1,700 people show up. So we have a few seats in here. I can tell you it's crazy in the children areas right now. If you have kids, you know how that is. It's crazy there. More than 400 of those show up are in our children's area. We're a really young church. To date, we've baptized 1,861 people in the life of this church. Good. And we're going to have a baptism service in November, and you take that one, and the first one next year, whenever it is, we're going to go roaring past 2,000 people, messy people that have come to faith in Christ and got their life straightened out here. It's awesome. We have over 80 life groups. There are hundreds of life group stories, but one of my favorites happened just a couple weeks ago. We had one life group that for some reason canceled their meeting. Well, the ones most disappointed were the kids, not the adults. They maybe think, oh, I'm going to stay home on Sunday night. Well, the kids, no, we are not canceling life group. We're going to have life group, and we're going to do it right here at my house. This is a 7-year-old girl. So she spent the afternoon writing her own worship song and preparing her lesson to teach her parents at their life group. And I think that picture is going to go up here in a minute. So here's her worship song over here. God, do you love me? Tell me. God, do you love me? Tell me. We're going to hear this on Way FM someday, okay? She's starting early. And she told her parents, she said, now listen, life group starts at 7 o'clock. Dinner needs to be over, dishes cleaned, baths taken. We need to be ready to go at 7 o'clock because I'm starting on time whether you're here or not. And so she spent the afternoon getting her lesson ready at 7 o'clock. She's standing on the hearth of their fireplace. That's her platform. Sings her song and teaches her lesson to her parents. And what's the lesson on? The armor of God. How many places can you go where 7-year-olds are learning about the importance of putting on the armor of God every day? It was awesome. It was great. We had 6 mission trips this year. Rwanda was one of them. It's a really easy place to go to. It takes 3 days to get there and 3 days to come home, and everybody flies economy, so you're like this. But what happened while they were there? 7 days of medical clinics. They saw over 4,000 patients, started 7 new churches, and 700 people came to faith in Christ. Yeah. So that's possible because of what Jim was talking about. Listen, when we give, it's not about here. It's about people. And it's about people in Rwanda, and it's about the people in the other 18 mission and community organizations that we support out of this church every single month. We're a giving church. We sent 300 people to student camp this year, just short of that. And if you were there, you know on Saturday night when all the kids came back, they ran home, took a shower, and at 6 o'clock or something, we're back over cooking hot dogs back at the fairgrounds to have a baptism service. So up on the platform, there's horse troughs spread out, and we start baptizing kids, and about 45 or so were baptized that night, but there was one girl that wasn't. She wanted to be baptized on Sunday so her dad could be here. Sunday morning comes, have the service, Phil does his thing, we start baptism, this young lady's baptized. Her dad responds. He gets up, walks out of his seat, down that aisle, back to that door, met Jim Johnson, gave his life to Christ, went in and changed clothes and came in here and got baptized on the same Sunday his daughter was baptized. Now that's worth cheering about, isn't it? What a great story. Next week is Go Do. Jim mentioned that. Why do we go out in the community? Because that's where the people are, okay? That's where the people that need Jesus are. They're out there, and we're going to make a big difference. So in 13 years, we've gone from 30 to about 3,000 adults would call this their church home. Trust me, if they all showed up on the same Sunday, we would really have a problem, okay? But that's about the number that would say, hey, the Bridge is my home. Another 1,000 kids are here, are part of that mix. Who are they? Where'd they come from? What was their life like when they got there? Watch this. This is in their own words. So we're a church full of stories. Those are our starting places. I've worked with a few churches. They have what I call old Joe stories. You ask, does this ever make any difference in anybody's life? And they say, well, there's old Joe. Well, who's old Joe? Well, he was in jail, and the deacon went down, and he gave his faith to Christ, and that's him. He's an usher back there. Well, when was that? That must have been 7 or 8 years ago. Well, do you have any new Joe stories? Listen, we're a church of new Joe stories. One of them, young man, he was 19 when he came. He's one of those spiritually poor people that Jesus talked about. He came, he got involved, met some people, gave his life to Christ, baptized. His life was a mess. He'd struggled, and he began to rebuild his life. He found a job. It's a good thing, guys, finding jobs, okay? And gals. But he needed transportation. He could borrow his grandma's car, but getting to work was the thing. Man, we take care of messy people here. Somebody in this church, I don't even know who it was, raised their hand and said, I'll give him a car. So he got a car. He was able to get to work. He found a better job. He's still here. He sat in the last service. He serves in children's ministry. His life impacted his family. And his father's given his life to Christ since then. Now, isn't that a great story? Come on, you can do this. We're TBF. Bring them on when they're spiritually poor. We want them. There was a lady in the first service this morning, a mom. The unimaginable, at least to me, happened in her life. 24-year-old son died of a heart attack. I can't even conceive of how that feels. Her heart was crushed. She was broken, hurting. She was a believer, had a church, but for some reason, she just couldn't go into her church. I don't know why, but she would go and she just couldn't go. And that went on for some time. Finally, her sister got on her case a little bit and said, you need to go to church. Mama would be not happy with you, okay? She says, I know, I'll go this week. So she got in her car and drove to her church, got to the parking lot, and she couldn't get out. So she drove out of the parking lot and started heading to Lebanon, driving right down Highway 70 right out here. And when just before she got to Powell Grove Road, she heard the Lord say, turn in there. This is real stuff. And she said, when I got to the top of the parking lot, I just felt the presence of the Lord coming on me. And I parked, and by then it was strong, and I came through the doors, and people greeted me and welcomed me and were glad to see me. And when I sat down, I just knew God was going to heal my heart here. That was 3 years ago. She's here every week. The great thing about her story is she told me, she said, now I can think about my son without sorrow because my heart's healed. Isn't that a great story? You want to talk about the importance of the people, Jim mentioned it, that stand out there and help people park and come through the doors and welcome them and smile and say we're glad? What would have happened if we hadn't have done that? One of the things Jesus said was, I came to set the prisoners free. Prisoners. We had one right in our church. Convicted. Off to jail for 6 months. He's still on probation. Where is he? He's on our staff. Now, some people say, oh my gosh. You know, last week we sang the song, who the Son has set free is free indeed. Well, I want to tell you, if Jesus sets somebody free, the church ought to be willing to set them free too. This deal is not about who you were, it's about who you are. If it was about who you were, Moses couldn't have done his job. He was guilty of murder. David was guilty of adultery and murder. If it was who you were, David's out. Paul had persecuted the church. If it was who you were, Paul is out. That's not it. The whole deal is for God to take us from where we were to where we are now. And that's what he wants to do. And let me tell you another great story. While he's in jail, his life group comes around his family and encourages them and takes care of them and supports them the whole time he's in there. That's a great story. We're TBF. We have a lot of stories. He gives sight to the blind. So there's a young lady. The way she described herself was, my life is utter darkness. Jesus said, I want to give sight to the blind. So somehow she gets connected with us, goes to the hill, gets in a small group, finds Jesus and gives her life to him, gets baptized. Then she gets involved. She goes on a mission trip to Costa Rica. And a whole new way of living is opened up in her eyes then when she's there. It's all of a sudden like, oh, hey, I can do something important in life. Where is she today? She's in a dangerous part of the world, feeding Syrian refugees from the war in Syria that are mostly Muslim. Sharing Christ, starting churches. What a great way. What a great story. Some of these people that come, they even show up here sometimes living together, not married. Oh my goodness. If you were at the Church of the Holy and Righteous, no. You can't be in our small group. You can't, you can sit on the back row, but that's it. That's not TBF. We don't care what your mess is. Bring it. We're going to teach truth and let God do what He wants to do. So where's Phil today? Yesterday, Phil married that couple. Isn't that great? We could have turned them away. No. Their hearts got pierced. They found Jesus. He married them. And you guys know Phil. He had them sign the church membership covenant right there as part of the marriage ceremony. I got you now. We're going to get you. We're just a church full of stories. People that showed up in a mess, they found Jesus, and somehow something good happened. Big Daddy Weave wrote a song a few years ago called My Story. It's one of my favorite songs because if you've heard, some of you heard my story, so you know his story is my story. I tear up every time I hear it. And he says in this song, he says, people that find Jesus, they find hope that won't let go, love that never gives up, grace that is greater than our sin, where mercy wins, the enemy loses, and freedom sets us free. That's the TBF story. It's my story. It's your story. I'm going to pray, and then we're going to stand and worship and thank God for all the stories we have, the new Joe stories, the old Joe stories, the messy stories, and the oh poop stories. Go ahead and stand. God, we are so grateful that you have pulled a group of people together who have a heart for messy people. Remembering that all of us were once messy and to some extent still messy. We're thankful for the stories. We're thankful that your grace is greater than our sin. And Jesus, you come hard after us and draw us in.